today at Judges chapter 3. And this is a typical book, a typical chapter in the book of Judges. We're going to see a whole lot of stuff in here. And like I said, the book of Judges is one of those books where there's not a whole lot of dead time. There's not a whole lot of like boring situations in here. A lot of actions. But a lot of this is not always the kind of things that you say, oh, I want to try to emulate that and do that too. Because it comes from a lot of situations where people are neglecting God, and because they neglect God, then they're saying, oh, we need some assistance and some help, but then they go back and neglect God again. So they become this yo-yo type of a fellowship with God, which is nothing that we want to encourage. But the key is that they come back to God. But the thing that we recognize is that God never leaves them. God had promised them. He said, I will never leave you. I will never break my covenant with you. He will always be there. No matter how we act or how we go or walk, he's there waiting for us to come back, like the father of the prodigal son. So we got to keep that in mind. So there's a lot of things in this particular chapter. We're going to see several judges. We're going to see how God calls them and how he uses them, and some of the reasons why these things are the way they are and why these particular circumstances have come about. How do you get to the place where you're like devoid of the things of God? How do you get there? Well, we'll look and talk about some of that today. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get the reading in. We're looking at Judges chapter 3. And let me come out here, cancel that, and add the audio so you can hear it. And let's take a listen.
Chapter 3. Now these are the nations which the Lord left to prove Israel by them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the wars of Canaan. Only that the generations of the children of Israel might know, to teach them war, at the least such as before knew nothing thereof. Namely, 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, and the Sidonians, and the Hivites that dwelt in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal Hermon unto the entering in of Hamath. And they were to prove Israel by them, to know whether they would hearken unto the commandments of the Lord, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. And the children of Israel dwelt among the Canaanites, Hittites, and Amorites, and Perizzites, and Hivites, and Jebusites. And they took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served their gods. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and forgat the Lord their God, and served Baalim and the groves. Therefore the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of Chushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. And the children of Israel served Chushan-Rishathaim 8 years. And when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised up a deliverer to the children of Israel, who delivered them, even Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he judged Israel, and went out to war. And the Lord delivered Chushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand. And his hand prevailed against Chushan-Rishathaim. And the land had rest 40 years. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord. And he gathered unto him the children of Ammon and Amalek, and went and smote Israel, and possessed the city of palm trees. So the children of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. But when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised them up a deliverer, Ehud the son of Gera, a Benjamite, a man left-handed, and by him the children of Israel sent a present unto Eglon the king of Moab. But Ehud made him a dagger which had 2 edges, of a cubit length, and he did gird it under his raiment upon his right thigh. And he brought the present unto Eglon king of Moab, and Eglon was a very fat man. And when he had made an end to offer the present, he sent away the people that bare the present. But he himself turned again from the quarries that were by Gilgal, and said,
I have a secret errand unto thee, O king, who said, Keep silence.
And all that stood by him went out from him. And Ehud came unto him, and he was sitting in a summer parlor which he had for himself alone. And Ehud said,
I have a message from God unto thee.
And he arose out of his seat, and Ehud put forth his left hand, and took the dagger from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. And the haft also went in after the blade, and the fat closed upon the blade, so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly, and the dirt came out. Then Ehud went forth through the porch, and shut the doors of the parlor upon him, and locked them. When he was gone out, his servants came, and when they saw that, behold, the doors of the parlor were locked, they said,
Surely he covereth his feet in his summer chamber.
And they tarried till they were ashamed. And behold, he opened not the doors of the parlor. Therefore they took a key, and opened them. And behold, their lord was fallen down dead on the earth. And Ehud escaped while they tarried, and passed beyond the quarries, and escaped unto Seirah. And it came to pass, when he was come, that he blew a trumpet in the mountain of Ephraim. And the children of Israel went down with him from the mount, and he before them. And he said unto them,
Follow after me, for the Lord hath delivered your enemies the Moabites into your hand.
And they went down after him, and took the fords of Jordan toward Moab, and suffered not a man to pass over. And they slew of Moab at that time about 10,000 men, all lusty and all men of valor, and there escaped not a man. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest 80 years. And after him was Shamgar the son of Anath, which slew of the Philistines 600 men with an ox goad, and he also delivered Israel.
All right. So as you can see, a lot of action in here in the book of Judges. Now, keeping in mind that we already had a understanding that the people had from the previous chapters, we saw that they were very wishy-washy when it came to serving God. A lot of it was because of their ignorance and their unfamiliarity that they had with God. They didn't see God do because this was a new generation, right? And so they didn't see how God brought them out of Egypt. They didn't see God bringing them through the wilderness and crossing into the Jordan. And so you come to this new generation that for whatever reason, and this is one of the things we can identify with that. You talk to a 13, 14, 15-year-old, they think they already know how the world works. You know, they just think, and haven't really been around. And so what you find is a lot of times when you're trying to explain to somebody your experience from your years of wisdom and living to people that are young, they just like, well, you know what, that's just old folks talking. And sadly, sometimes that is because old folks sometimes can say things that they embellish it and make it bigger than what it's supposed to be. But the key is when you have someone that will tell you what God has done and what God can do for you, it's important to try to have an open ear to be able to hear. Unfortunately, a lot of times that just doesn't happen. The next generation that comes up oftentimes will have to make the same mistakes the previous generation did. They don't learn from that. It would be good to learn from somebody else's mistake rather than learning from your own mistake. But sometimes you just got to be like, okay, well, they're not going to listen to me. They're going to have to learn the hard way. But if you had an ear to hear things, especially when they come from the things of God, you won't have to go through the difficulties. What we're going to see here is God's going to let them know, well, because you have rebelled and chosen to go your own way, and as the book of Judges will often say here, we'll see that in coming chapters, that everybody is deciding to do what they think is right in their own heart. I'm going to do what I feel is right. And that's the theme of this book, you know. So let's look at what that has got them so far. Let's take a look here in chapter 3, verse 1. Now, these are the nations which the Lord left to prove Israel. So God knew, we talked about that last week. God knew that he was going to have some nations there because Israel was not going to fully do what God had told him to do, and God was going to use the nations that were left as means of proving or instructing or teaching them and letting them know, I need to show you who I am. I need to be able to have you identify me and know that I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm the one that led Moses out of Egypt and through the wilderness. So he's proving Israel. He says, by them, even many of Israel had not known all the wars of Canaan. There's the ignorance. They don't know it, and they're not listening. See, when you are ignorant and unwilling to learn, what does that mean? It means you stay ignorant. But will you listen to somebody? Will you go into this word and go, okay, I can see that the Bible, the scripture tells us these things of old were written for our benefit. Will you read these and be able to say, let me find out if I can identify anything in here that I can relate to, that I may need to change, that I may need to improve on, that I may need to develop better. All right? Well, what happens is a lot of times you don't know. And so he said that they didn't know the individuals, they didn't understand or experience any of the wars that they had in Canaan. And what does that mean? That means that you don't know that when you are outnumbered, God can deliver you. When you have less fighting power, they've talked about how these other nations had chariots of iron, and you didn't have it. How God can still deliver you. We're going to see that towards the end of this chapter again. We'll get to that in just a bit. All right. Verse 2. Only the generation of the children of Israel might know to teach them war. So God's going to have to teach them war. Now, what does that mean? Teach them that when you're fighting, you're not fighting alone. See, God doesn't want to teach them war strategies. He wants to teach them that during the war, you have an upper hand, or you have an advantage, because you can lean on me. I'm going to fight for you. I will deliver them into your hand. Well, this new generation don't know anything about that. They don't know anything about trusting God. They don't know anything about leaning on the Lord, bringing them through tough times. They're not hearing that. And so they're just looking, these other nations seem to got it going on. They got better things than we got. And they're trying to emulate and join with them. Because they're looking, because they're not walking by the things of God. They're walking by what they can see. And so their eyes are telling them they got better and more stuff than we got. Why don't we have stuff like that? How come we not living the way they're living? Not realizing, well, no, you're living with God. See, you have something that they can't see. They can't see God's favor with you. They don't see that. But yet you're looking over and seeing what they got and what they're doing. Right? And it's going to turn out to be not good. And so it says, just going to read that again in verse 2. It says, only the generation of the children of Israel might know to teach them war, at the least such as before knew nothing thereof. They had no understanding. Look at verse 3. Namely, 5 lords of the Philistines. Okay, this namely is, okay, these are the people we're going to leave. These are the people that God allowed to stay there. All right. 5 lords of the Philistines, the Canaanites, the Sidonians, the Hivites that dwell in Lebanon, in the mountain of Lebanon, from the mountain of Belhar-Ammon unto the entrance of Hamath. Okay, so there's a whole region of people that were not moved out of their land, and the people didn't do it because they were afraid and got too comfortable, and God let it happen. Plus, God knew it. God was not ignorant. He's like, well, these people are going to be used down the road anyway. It's kind of like a chess game for somebody that don't know how to play chess, and you see somebody making a move, and I'm going to move this here because down the road you're going to have to come down this way, and I'm going to use this piece against you. And so that's what God's doing. He's basically moving these nations into places where I'm going to use you later. because I'm going to need you to help instruct, because they're not listening to the spiritual message. So they got to learn the message the hard way. They are destined to go through the school of hard knocks. It's just no other way around it. They're not gonna graduate from listen and learn university. They're not gonna go to the school of pay attention to what happened before you college. They're not going through there. They're going through the school of hard knocks. Okay. Verse 4. And they were to prove Israel by them, to know whether they would hearken unto the commandments of the Lord, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. Now, you look at that and you read that, it says, okay, we want to prove to see whether they would know it. Okay, two things we want to point out here. Number one, God already knows. This doesn't have to happen so that God would know. What this will do, because since God already knows, this is going to occur so that you will know what you did. God already knows that you're going to either accept or reject him. And because God already knows that, he can pass judgment on those that accept and those that reject him right away. But then you would say, well, yeah, but you didn't give me a chance to actually do it. You're just doing it because you know it. And so what God does, what we are being told in Scripture, God gives us the revelation to say, God is letting us know this is why you got what you got. I need you now to see what I already know. So these lessons are not, these things and these experiences are not for God to learn whether a person or a nation or a group of people will do certain things. God already knows it. But God now has to, I need you to understand what I already know. And the only way you can do that is if you live it. So I'm going to allow you to live in your own heart. That's what this book is about. How you going to work and deal out of your own thinking and out of your own ways. Yes, sir.
Okay, now, are these the 5 tribes that they wanted to take advantage of in chapter 2? Ain't these the tribes that they said we can keep and try to take advantage of?
Yes, these are the tribes that they said we're gonna keep them alive, and we're gonna do what? We're gonna get tribute from them. Okay. We're gonna allow them to work for us and serve us, And as you see, after a while, there's no more tribute. Now they become okay. Now we're friends, but then after a while, it's gonna keep on flipping. And now wait a minute. Who's gonna be paying tribute to who? We're gonna see that here in this chapter in a while. But yes, you're absolutely right, sir. All right. And so it goes on. Verse 5. Look what it says. And the children of Israel dwelt among the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. So now they're dwelling among them. They're just right there with them. And what you notice here in this new generation, you didn't see them, they're dwelling among them. There's no word about like what you said, I'm going to get tribute or taxes from you. No, now we're what? Dwelling among. So something has changed in this new generation. Well, let's keep going.
Now we're buddy-buddy.
We're all buddies. Yep. We're all so-called equal. All right, let's look, but that ain't the end of it. There's some more to it. Look at verse 6. And they took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to be their sons, and served their gods. All right, verse 7. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and forgot the Lord their God, and served Balaam and the groves. All right, so there it is. There's the problem. So we're all coming together, and I heard some of my old folks, my old generation, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they were telling us about this God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and how they were going to deliver them, and how they were going to make them a great nation. But I'm looking at you guys. You guys got iron and chariots and things, and all these other things. And I like the way you guys do your stuff. I like your religious practices. We got all these rituals where we got to kill these goats. We got to kill these turtle doves. We got to sacrifice all these things. We got to put this tent up and this tabernacle and all this stuff and all this work that we got to do. And we got to bring in all these things every other day or certain things. And no. But your God, we just get together. And the whole aspect behind the Balaam, which is the masculine God, and the groves or the asterisk, which is the feminine God, is all built around the lust of people. All of that is built around it, and we will get a lot more into that, as we go along. But you just look at the Balaam as, and we see aspects of the Balaam God all over the world. The Balaam God is a phallic symbol, it's a relationship of building these phallic symbols that they were built up, and you see them all over the world. And basically, to be more direct, it's supposed to be a symbolism of the male private part, the male penis, and so the genitalia of the male, and so you would see these very long phallic symbols of statues going up. We have one in Washington D.C., the Washington Monument. Same thing. It's one of those, and then it's built around a grove. I don't know if you ever noticed that. And the grove, once again, is an asterisk symbol, and it's representing the female. And they call it the grove because it's basically something where you have something lined up, where you have things on two sides. Once again, kind of symbolizing the female genitalia. And so the children of Israel are like, your worship, your religion is a lot more fun, enjoyable than our religion. Because your religion talks about things we lust after. We don't want to kill goats and lambs and pigeons and turtle doves and all that kind. And so there's a shift. But God is trying to get them to understand that the wages of sin is death. And nobody can live but to die. And then we talked about this before. When you want to say, well, yeah, but that Israelite religion was so horrible, all these sacrifices. Well, what do we have like today? I mean, people are cooking all over. They're cooking turkeys and hams and lambs. Well, what those things? What they just donated that and grew another leg or another? No, those were sacrifices. Everything that we do to stay alive is because we kill something and we use that we kill to give us extra life. And it's just a remarkable thing that a lot of times people don't see that. And so when God says, well, that's how you will live. The wages of sin is death. If you're going to continue to live, you've got to continuously pay the wages. And so the key is somebody else dies for you to keep you living. And that's how Jesus saved us the same way. He died for us. And so, a lot of times people look at that aspect of the Jewish religion that was given by Moses, by God through Moses, and then look at it, it's like, well, that's just a lot of extra work. Well, so is cooking, so is slaughtering, so is butchering an animal. All of that is work. And if you don't do it properly, and yes, sir.
It's funny, every time you say that, like Jesus died for us, I get chills. I get these chills because, everybody's saved. All you gotta do is follow Jesus. Everybody from here out for the rest of eternity is saved.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I said, man, you just look at and just see how powerful this man is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not this man, this spirit.
Yeah.
Just how powerful his spirit is.
Yes.
That for the rest of your life, you don't have nothing to worry about if you follow.
If you follow. That's right.
It's unbelievable.
It is. You're right. It is. And so when you look at that, and so this whole new generation, they now dwelt among all of these people, that they're giving their wives and their sons to each other. And, and the whole intermarrying issue is not the real issue. The issue is, well, when they intermarry, they begin to do what? Serve the other God. All right. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go down a little bit more in this chapter. Look at verse 8. Therefore, the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel. And we talked about that before. That when it says that, it's giving us an anthropomorphic form of how to describe what God is feeling, which can no way be identified by just mere human emotions. So it has to give the best description of it. God has not lost control. He's not upset in the sense that, well, he's out of control and couldn't believe. I'm mad because I didn't think you would do that. Remember, God already knew. But what that does is it shows that that's the response to sin. God is angry at sin all the time. And so now when sin arises, God is angry. It's instant. It's just a reality of who God is. All right? And so therefore, because sin then produces more sin produces more death. But we also got to take into consideration that also more sin can also, by the love of God, create more grace and mercy too. And that's what God oftentimes does. All right, and so the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of Crushesrish Mathadim, king of Mesopotamia. And the children of Israel served that king for 8 years. So now they're in what? The whole role, what happened? Reversed. Mm-hmm. Now they're serving the king and giving tribute. All right? Why? Well, you didn't do what you were told. And if you, the old saying, you play with a dog long enough, he'll lick you in the face. Mm-hmm. And so you got to just keep that in mind. And eventually that's what happens. So verse 8. No, I read that already. Verse 9. It says, and when the children of Israel cried. Now, why are they crying? Well, wait a minute.
Back in bondage.
They're back in bondage, exactly. So what God is doing, he's saying, I need to reproduce for you what your great-grandfather was telling you. How they were in Egypt, in bondage, and how I brought them out. So now I got to do a whole nother replay, because you wouldn't listen to them. Because you the new generation. Y'all got new things going on. Y'all don't do it the old way. Y'all don't believe in that old school stuff. So guess what? Now you're going to have an old school experience. You're going to go back into bondage. All right? But then they cried unto the Lord. The Lord raised up a deliverer to the children of Israel, who delivered them, even Othniel. Remember Othniel? Remember him, the brother of Caleb? Remember? And then Caleb said, hey, if you go out there and conquer this land, I'll give you my daughter. And so Othniel married his niece, and you can tell there that there was a lot of age gap between that. He was, when they say younger brother, he might have been his way younger brother. All right, but and so Othniel is the very first judge. We already talked about that already. Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. Verse 10. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Now, I underline that in my Bible because that's the key about the book of Judges. The book of Judges will talk oftentimes about the Spirit of the Lord coming on an individual. Not because the individual deserved it, not because the individual was worthy of it, but because God chose him. I'm going to choose you to be a deliverer. And so all of the judges are symbolic and representative of Jesus coming and delivering. All right? Not the fact that they were men that weren't perfect, because Jesus came perfect, but the fact that they were able to bring a deliverance, just like how Jesus did. So every single one of these judges has some kind of spiritual reference, some allegorical or some metaphorical connection to what Jesus did for us. Okay, so it says the Spirit of the Lord came on him, and he judged Israel and went down to war. So now he's going to go and fight. I'm going to do the fight for you. Guess who fought for us? Jesus. And the Lord delivered Cushan Rich Athiam, king of Mesopotamia, in his hand. So he went down there and he conquered this king. Okay, and his hand prevailed against Cushan Rich Athiam. All right, so he won the battle. He won the struggle. Look at verse 11. And the land had rest 40 years. All right. Now, for 40 years now, what God is showing this whole generation, he gave them 40 years. Look at what happens when you're in struggle, when you're in bondage, and you cry unto me. I deliver you. And I don't need to deliver you with anything, with a great army. I didn't have to bring another whole group of people in to help you fight. I fought for you. I delivered them into your hands, is what God is saying. I'm the one that gets the victory. And if you can recognize that you will always be a better and superior people if you have me. If you don't have me, you will always be an inferior people. And so that's the lesson that hopefully God is saying, now will you learn? God already knows what's going to happen. But for how many years? For 40 years. They follow in the strength of that experience. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 12. And the children of Israel did evil again.
Got 11.
Huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
You forgot 11.
I forgot 11. Okay, sorry. Let's go back to 11. Oh yes, and the land and the land had rest 40 years, and Othniel the son of Kishon died. All right.
Yeah, you hadn't finished it.
I didn't finish it. Yes. So they had rest for 40 years until what happened? Othniel died. Now this is actually I'm kind of glad you brought me back to that, because that's another thing that we want to try to point out to. They were doing well as long as they could see who God was working through. I see God working through you, so we're basically, they're kind of worshiping the person that has the allegiance with God rather than worshiping God. And so they were fine for 40 years until Othniel died. Then all of a sudden, look what happens in verse 12. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, king of Moab. So now we got God. Now he went and did what? He gave strength to another king. And what does this look like? Once again, it looks just like when Israel was in Egypt. And Egypt had authority. So it's repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Why? Because the new generation refuses to learn from the lessons of the old generation. They won't hear it. And what God is saying, I know you won't learn it, so I'm going to have you go through the same struggle. You could avoid this struggle if you would heed, but you won't heed. So you got to have the same struggle there. Now, what that means is you will get the same experience that your grandfather and your great grandfathers had, but you could have avoided it. But you're not. You didn't avoid it. All right. So now we got Eglon, king of Moab, came up against Israel because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord. What are they doing? They're going back to that same stuff. We already outlined it. Worshiping the Ashtoreth and the groves and the and the Balaams. All right. And look at verse 13. And he gathered unto him the children of Ammon and Amalek. So now Eglon, he went and made an allegiance with two other nations that don't serve God, Ammon and Eglon. All right, now we can trace Ammon all the way back to, and remember, Eglon, king of Moab, made an allegiance with Ammon. Now you can trace Moab and Ammon all the way back to Sodom and Gomorrah. Right? Which is, and you say, so why do these two false gods have this kind of perverted, sexual innuendo in them? Well, because a lot of their heritage goes all the way back to where? Sodom and Gomorrah. All right? And there's a lot I could say about that, but just want to make sure we bring that up. It says, and they went and smote Israel and possessed the cities of palm trees. So that nice area, when you say the city of palm trees, that means palm trees grow in what kind of climate? That nice climate. You go down to Florida and you go down to Georgia, that's where you see all those nice palm trees, nice warm weather. All right? You don't have no winters there. Well, now that's where they were. You ain't owning that land now. That ain't your retirement home no longer. You don't got that for you because it's been taken from you. Why? Because you have ignored God. All right, verse 14. So the children of Israel served Eglon, king of Moab, 18 years. So now they're back in bondage. A yo-yo, back and forth, back and forth. They're back in bondage. All right, let's see what happens. We know what's going to happen. Look at verse 15. But when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, the Lord raised up a deliverer. All right, just like he did in Egypt, he raised up who? Moses. So what now? This whole new generation. All right, because you had 40 years, then they didn't serve, and now they came back, and now they got 18 years. So that's like 58 years. It's a whole generation. All right, and so now they're bringing. They got another whole sense of being in bondage. All right, and so it says the Lord raised up them to a deliverer, Ehud, the son of Zerah, a Benjamite. All right, so now he's raising up a Benjamite. And I underline Benjamite because we're going to see Benjamin bring forth some very interesting situations here when we go forward. One of the things that we'll see that we already know, Saul, who became Paul, is a Benjamite. They wrote most of the New Testament. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. But we're going to see some things about the Benjamites that are pretty interesting. But look at this. So he raised up an individual, Ehud, all right, and it says a Benjamite, a man left-handed. Keep that in mind. The left-handed means something because it means he's not like how most people are. He's slightly different. He does things a different way, which is symbolic of don't keep doing what this world is doing. Can you do it a little different? It's symbolic of that. And he has another symbol too. All right, it's Ehud. All right, we'll point that out in a minute. He was a left-handed, and by him the children of Israel sent a present unto Eglon, the king of Moab. So what present are they sending? They're sending their tribute. They're paying their taxes. He's going up to deliver the taxes. We've gathered the taxes from all the people, and we got to bring it up to Eglon, the king of Moab. Okay, but Ehud made him a dagger which had two edges. What is described in the Bible as something that has two edges? The Word of God. So it's a symbolic aspect. It's metaphorical. It's a type. But Ehud made him a dagger that is symbolic of the Word of God, of a cubit length, and he girded it under his raiment on his right thigh. Right? And that's another symbolic thing. Remember, he was left-handed.
Left-handed.
So therefore, when he reaches across to grab it, he's going to reach across and grab it on his what? On the right thigh. Now, everybody else, all the other soldiers, they have all their weapons secured on the left side. So you can reach across and grab it. And the thing is, so you can reach across it and grab it and swing at the same time. You don't have to get down, then get set, and then swing. You can grab and swing. All right? And that's the advantage of mounting your weapon on the opposite side of your dominant hand. Okay? And so that's an important thing to keep in mind. Now, look at what happens here. So Ehud is on his way to deliver the tribute, the gift, the present, to Eglon, king of Moab. Look at 17. And he brought the present to Eglon, king of Moab, and Eglon was a very fat man. Now, what does that speak about? He ain't worried about nothing.
He's a glutton.
He just wants to satisfy whatever he needs to satisfy. All right. If I'm hungry, I'm hungry, and if I got appetite, I'm going to appetite. But that's part of the culture. Their worship, the Balaam, the Asherah, the groves. the phallic symbols, and all of that is part of. I'm just going to satisfy all of the fleshly lust that I want. And Eglon was king of that, and he was so much of a king of that he was extremely fat. All right, verse 18. And when he had made an end of offering the presents, he gave the gift. He sent away the people that bared the present. And Ehud said, okay, all you guys, thank you for helping me bring this present up. Y'all can leave. He wants them to get out of the city, get out of the town. Because he knows he's about to do something. He didn't want them to be hanging around to be, part of a casualty. He didn't want any situations to happen to them based on what he was about to do. Look at verse 19. But he himself turned again from the quarry that were in Gilgal and said, I have a secret errand unto thee, O king, who said, keep silent. All right, so he said, I have something secret, something additional to give to the king that I don't want anybody to know about. And of course, the king's like, oh, I know, because I'm that special, and I deserve extra. And so the king's ego was just stroked by him saying this, and he's like, oh, definitely, let him come on up. And look what it says. And all that stood by him went out from him. All right, so the king's like, okay, y'all can leave. Y'all can't hear this. This is just for me. Verse 20. And Ehud came unto him, and he was sitting in his summer parlor. Now, what that means, he was sitting in a place where he probably had a seat and a throne that was so comfortable, but it also allowed him that if he had to go to the bathroom, he didn't have to get up.
Dang.
So you wonder why he's a fat man, right? All right. So that's the summer parlor. All right? And it had pipes and things so that when he sat down there, it just kind of went down, and we would call it a modern day toilet. Right? But that was a big thing for a king back then. I could sit here and I ain't got to even get up to go to the bathroom. This is mighty nice. Okay? Which he had for himself alone. He was the only one that had one of these. Nobody else had one. And Ehud said, I have a message from God unto thee. And he arose out of his seat, and Ehud put forth his left hand and took the dagger from his right thigh and thrust it into his belly. Right? He's bringing an end to this thing that is ruling over me. This is how you have to treat sin. If sin is dominating over you, you have to kill it. That's what this symbolizes here. Right? Look at 22. And the half also went in after the blade. What does that mean? The handle. He stuck him with the blade, and the other half of the dagger went in as well. And the fat closed up upon the blade so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly. So the fat just overwhelmed it, and he couldn't even draw it out. He just was able to get his hand out. And the dirt came out. Well, what's the dirt? The dung. This man had a whole lot of stuff in his intestines, and all of it just came out. All right? And that's the thing. What is in sin? Nothing good. Nothing but stink, dirt, dung. That's all that's what sin is. And Eglon was an example of someone that just absorbed sin.
Like they called it early, they called it the chicken.
Yep. That's right. Exactly. And so you see here now, all the dirt or the dung is coming out of him. 23. And Ehud went forth through the porch. Now he's climbing down this situation that he had built, this little summer parlor that he had built, and shut the door of the parlor unto him and locked them. 24. when he had gone out, his servants came, and when they saw that, behold, the door of the parlor was locked, they said, surely he covereth his feet in his summer chamber. All right, so what does that mean? Well, when he does got to use the summer chamber, that he would take his clothes off and he would lay it down by his feet while he was using it. And I think, okay, he's covering his feet. He's going to the bathroom. Okay. 25. And they tarried till they were ashamed, and behold, he opened not the door of the parlor. So they're looking, well, my goodness, how long he gonna be doing this? And now they're like, wait a minute, this ain't, something ain't right here. And nobody stay in the bathroom that long. I don't care how fat you are. He's in there way too long. All right. It says, therefore they took a key and opened them, and behold, their Lord was fallen down dead on the earth. All right. Why? Because Ehud done killed him. Eglon was dead. And that's once again what we got to do with sin. 26. And Ehud escaped while they tarried. While they were sitting there trying to figure it out, he got out of town. He didn't have to also worry about the other people that helped bring the presents up, because he already sent them away earlier. Y'all get out. So now he escaped and passed beyond the quarries and escaped unto Serath. 27. And it came to pass, when he was come, he blew a trumpet. Now, that's an important thing to keep in mind. We always talk about that aspect about the trumpet. Remember when we were going through them dealing with the walls of Jericho, and he said that we're going to march around there, and when we finally decide to go in, we're going to do it. We're going to blow the trumpet. And we always try to connect that to how when Jesus comes in and gives us the victory by gathering us out unto him, so that we can join his side. He says, "I'm going to come down with the trump of God, with the voice of the archangel, and the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first, and then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up to be with the Lord, and so shall we ever be with the Lord." So I always think about that when I see the trumpets being blown, and then I look and see what kind of things happening. Usually, it's great victory. All right. He blew the trumpet into the mountain of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mount, and he before them. All right, so now they're running together. Why? Once again, the children of Israel have somebody that they can see has done something in obedience to God, and they can follow it. They just always have to have some other kind of connection rather than connecting to God directly. 28. And he said unto them, follow after me, for the Lord hath delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. All right. The Moabites have been delivered. All right. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. Now, one of the things that we're going to see here when we get done with the book of Judges, as we're going to, and we get through with Samuel and King, we're going to see another book called the book of Ruth. And guess where Ruth comes from? Mm-hmm. Ruth comes from the Moabite people. So always keep that in mind, that the mingling with the people, if they only told the people, you can only be part of us if you follow our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's what we're going to see Ruth do. All right? But that's not what Israel do. Israel comes and goes, no, we want to follow your God. We want to follow Balaam and Asherus and the groves and the pillars. That's what we want to follow. All right? And that's where the problem happens. But here, now they're all following Ehud. They're all following them down to fight the enemy, Moab. Moab has been delivered into your hand. And they went down after him and took the fords of Jordan towards Moab, and suffered not a man to pass over. So now that all of a sudden they're empowered. But remember, they're empowered by who? By God. But God is letting them look at what you can do if you just trust me, if you believe in me, if you have faith in me, if you wait on me, if you lean on me, depend on me. This is what can happen. 29. And they slew Moab at that time 10,000 men, all lusty. That means they were all what? Strong people. Right? They all had their own abilities. All had their own girth about them. Right? And all men of valor. Right? They knew how to fight. And there escaped not a man. Don't care how big and lusty they were, nor how skilled they were, none of them survived. Why? Because God was fighting. Verse 30. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest 80 years. 80 years. So a score is 20. And so that's 80 years it had rest. Right? That's 2 generations worth. All right. So once again, okay, when we listen, we're not gonna make that same mistake we made, like we did. We thank God for Ehud. He was the one that helped deliver us, and we're gonna believe in what God has done. All right. Well, you could have believed in what the previous generation told you about Moses, what they told you about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. You could have believed that, but they have to have their own thing. Right? That's how a lot of generations are. We need our own thing to believe in. All right? So they believe. All right. Well, we're not done yet, though. We got one more verse. Let's take a look. And after him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, which slew the Philistines 600 men with an ox goad, and he also delivered Israel. All right. So after the working of Ehud, this guy Shamgar came up. Now and he brought, it's kind of like a back to back. Okay, here's somebody else coming right after Ehud, and now we got somebody else that we can look to as being used by God. All right. Now, what was unique about him? Okay, he went up and he delivered them out of the hands of the Philistines. But look at what it says that he used. He used an ox goad. All right. So this is not a weapon made out of metal, not a sword, not a blade, not bows and arrows and spears. He's using just something he can go grab and pick up. The concept is what God told Moses. What is that in your hand? Use what you got. I'll give you deliverance through that thing that's in your hand. And so you look at that and you can see once again another type and symbolic aspect pointing back to Moses. Use what you got. So you don't need all of the fancy stuff that the Philistines and the Moabs and the Ammon and the Canaanites have. If you have me, you can take everyday, ordinary objects and get victory. But the key is, will you be willing to allow me to give you the victory? Because the victory doesn't come through what you have. The victory comes through your relationship with me. All right. And so when we look at this, we can say, okay, well, it looks like they've been doing good. They had that 80 years. A score is 20. And so, that's 80 years. And so they're doing good. And then here comes Shamgar, and he gives them another deliverance. All right. And you look, okay, well, we're going to end this chapter. It looks like they're hanging on in there. I'll give you a preview. In the next chapter, it's going to happen again. A new generation.
I just looked down and said, "They're at the end."
A new generation, and they still not listening. And let me tell you, that is not an old adage that has gone away. Each generation seems to have to learn their way. They got to learn the hard way. All right? And so, and I can't get mad because I remember when I was a kid, and I was like, well, I know what I'm doing. I do what And then now you try to give it to the new kids, and then nope, same old stuff. And that's the thing. Everybody's got to kind of learn their own way. Everybody seems to have to go through some level of experience in the school of hard knocks. And yet, through that, if you will do that, you can graduate with a degree in knowing God. That's the key. Don't be a dropout, and don't get to know God. Get to know God. If you got to learn it the hard way, learn it and learn God. Learn the Word of God. Learn to trust in God. Learn to depend on God. Have that kind of degree, and you'll be able to make it through the remainder of your walk with the Lord. All right, we're going to stop there. Any comments or questions on what we talked about?